Okay, so as a free zoner, what's your definition of a suppressive person?
I've got my particular personal take on that. I don't think there's that many suppressive people around. L.Ron Hubbard talked about 2.5%. I know that 2.5% of the people I've interacted with are not suppressive. I haven't had that many, nowhere near that many, just maybe 3 or 4 in my life. Having said that, I'm probably very good at avoiding such people. So, I don't know, that's just my personal experience. That's my personal thought.
Oh, okay. But if you were to meet a suppressive person, by your own definition, what would that person be like?
Well, I did meet one. It's a very funny case. Back in London, we hosted students of English who were from foreign countries. We had one girl come to us, and the school who placed her with us sort of warned us that, look, this girl's been kicked out of 5 other families. You sure you want to take her? So they told me, I'll just say, oh, I'll handle anything. So I said, yeah, fine. Anyway, she came and stayed for a couple of weeks, and she's very, very strange. She was Japanese. And the first time I went up and said hello to her when she just arrived in the house, when I knocked on the door, I said, hello, I'm Terrell, I'm your host person. And she looked at me, she didn't smile. Have you ever seen that from a Japanese person on the first meeting? So I thought, wow, this girl's weird. And then later there was problems. She started fights, threw water over someone. And then later she moved across the road to someone else because we didn't want her anymore. A lot of problems she caused. And then I predicted, I bet you this girl's going to try and put a petrol bomb through our letterbox. Well, she didn't. She actually asked someone how to do it.
Oh, really?
That was someone I'd say, yeah, that fulfills the qualities of a suppressive person.
Okay, so
I checked the various points that indicate that, and she was a plus for all of them.
Right, so
that's really the only major suppressive person I've had to interact with in my life.
So it's a very specific kind of aggressive person as opposed to a large generalization that the church gives the definition for, right?
Well, I actually think the concept of a suppressive person, or I think you'd call it a psychopathic personality. There are people around who are toxic and poison to be around. But the church will call almost anyone that for political reasons. The people they kick out of the church are always declared suppressive. They do this, that, and the other, and usually it's a complete load of hogwash. So I don't. The church is not a good example of their labelling of people as suppressive. Is not a good example. Anyway, if you've got any more questions, I'll try and answer
I was thinking. Okay, so auditing you can get from a professional or from co-auditing. Books you can find online, or you can get from Amazon. How do you obtain an e-meter?
Well, in the free zone, there are people who make better e-meters than the church. The church meters cost about £3,000. The average price of a meter in the free zone is about 500 English pounds. Well, you can actually get them quite a bit cheaper. You can get them for $600, and I believe even as low as $200. But the main ones I've seen at about $1,000 are very good meters.
Now, does someone actually manufacture them, or are they just homemade, or?
Well, there's one person I know 2 people in England who make e-meters, and one of them, he used to deal with e-meters when Hubbard was running the show, and he worked under Hubbard with e-meters, and he's actually been fair gamed by the church. Isn't that the theme of this protest today? Fair game?
Fair game. Exactly.
Well, he's an 80-year-old man, and he's had people from the church, OSA operative, come around to him, shout and scream at him, threaten him to sue him, and basically try and intimidate him. And I find that terrible. The guy is a sweet guy. He makes his e-meters. He's a professional. He does a good job, and he sells them at a very reasonable price. So, if you want an e-meter, you don't have to depend on one from the church. The other thing they do is you try and sell an e-meter on eBay. They'll block the sale. I don't know why eBay takes any notice of them.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I'm not much of a lawyer, but they claim it's a copyright violation or something.
Well, I think
it's an electronic instrument the circuit diagram actually is covered by patent, and the circuit diagram was printed in a popular electronics magazine when the patent expired. So there's no illegal matter, nothing illegal about making an e-meter, and you can get better ones than the church. You can also get e-meters that display on a computer, and ones I've seen, they have a circular dial or a semicircular dial, and because it's circular, the needle is always visible. You don't have to fiddle around with a tone arm to get the needle back on the dial. It's always visible on the dial. So this is an advance.
Oh, so those dials are, because if it goes over to one side, you have to dial it up. So
well, you have to keep adjusting the tone arm to get the needle sort of more or less in the mid position of the meter.
Oh, okay.
So with some of these new meters displayed on a television screen, that no longer applies.
Okay. How is it that you how do you understand the e-meter to work? How does it function exactly?
Well, I believe the first person to think of the e-meter was Jung, the famous psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
He also pioneered auditing lists. You know, like you run a list of things to see if there's charge or emotional distress connected with it. He pioneered that a long time ago. These ideas have been developed extensively in Scientology. Then later, a guy called Volney Matheson, he took one of the parameters from a lie detector, and that was to measure galvanic skin response, and that's what the e-meter does basically. It's just a very sensitive meter to measure electrical resistance. Simple as that.
And like when you have a stressed thought or something like that.
Sorry?
When you have a stressed thought or something like that, how does it make the meter move?
Well, if an auditor asks you a question and there's a lot of, let's say, stress connected to it, or misemotion, painful emotion, or it's a painful incident, the needle would move that way, facing you.
I mean, like, what would cause that?
Exactly how the thought in the mind, the stress in the mind, gets interpreted to a movement of the needle is done through galvanic skin response. I'm not a scientist.
Okay.
I couldn't really go into it. I've read lots of people who are scientists discuss this on the net. The conclusion is it's a galvanic skin response. That's one of the parameters of the lie detector test, and it seems to work.
Okay. Because I think I've heard somewhere that if you squeeze the cans a bit, it makes the needle move because it decreases or increases resistance.
True, yeah.
And that the idea is that if you had a stressful thought, you would subconsciously grip a little tighter than you would usually, and that the e-meter would jump because of that.
If you're trained on reading an e-meter, you'd sort of be able to recognise when that happens. It's just not a... Learning to use an e-meter is a high skill. It's not that easy. You need a lot of training and practice, but that sort of thing is easy to see and account for.
Now, what's the ideal state of the needle on the e-meter? What is that?
Well, what's used is what's called a floating needle. The needle sort of idly moves uninfluenced. In other words, it indicates a very calm state of mind.